Hello, this is Richard Thompson of Austin Metropolitan Ministries welcoming you to this edition of Austin Faith Dialogue, where our topic is the Jewish Federation of Austin. Stay with us.
Austin Faith Dialogue, at the crossroads of religion and life. A series highlighting the cultural and social interactions between the worshiping and religious communities in and around the capital city. Austin Faith Dialogue is brought to you by the Austin Metropolitan Ministries in cooperation with KXAN. Join us now in Austin Faith Dialogue.
Welcome to Austin Faith Dialogue, where today we're going to be learning about the Jewish Federation of Austin, a growing community and also one that is very important to the life of Austin for many years. And we're grateful to have with us the director of the Jewish Federation, Barry Silverberg.
Hi.
Barry, we're glad to have you both on this show and in the city.
Thank you.
I think you just recently moved to Austin.
A year and a half.
And where did you come from and what were you doing there?
Upstate New York, where I was the director of the Jewish Federation there for 15 years, and 5 years earlier than that as assistant director.
Mm-hmm. And I think for folks who may not have heard about the Jewish Federation either elsewhere or here, tell us what an organization like that does.
The Jewish Federation is primarily the central secular organization in the Jewish community. The synagogues deal with the religious needs of the community, and what we do is raise dollars that support a Jewish community center, which is akin to a YWCA or YMCA, Jewish Family Service, which provides counseling services, adoption services, mental health services, both for the Jewish and the general community. We publish a monthly newspaper and a variety of youth programming. We have an early childhood program that has right now about 120 children in it, with a waiting list of about 200 children.
Wow.
So there's a tremendous need for that. Mm-hmm. We're in the process of building a Jewish community campus on Far West and Hart Lane in Northwest Hills, which takes a lot of my time. So we're and we are involved, as I said before, in open running a central fundraising campaign that makes all of that possible. So we're somewhat akin to United Way with a number of other dimensions.
Let's talk a little bit about that campus because it's received some publicity in recent times. You say we're building that. Does that mean the Jewish Federation is building that?
Well, it's a project of the Jewish Federation. It's a 40-acre site of which we have control of 22 acres. We're building a Jewish community center, which will be about a 54,000 square foot building. Parks, about 5 acres of parks, a variety of other things, and we're hopeful that the two major and other congregations in town, Jewish congregations, will move to the site and that we will have a place where the central institutions of the Jewish community are.
Oh, I see.
And including our family services. And a place to gather, celebrate, and share together.
Okay, well, let's talk about the religious side of the Jewish presence in Austin. You mentioned the worshiping centers. That includes Agudas Achim Synagogue,
Right.
Bethel.
There's about 6 or 7 synagogues in town. The largest are Temple Beth Israel, which is a Reformed congregation, then Congregation Agudas Achim, and then there's a number of others, including Chabad Lubavitch, which operates largely in the university area, and just about, as I said, 4 or 5 others.
Okay.
A combined population of about 7,000 to 10,000 Jews.
In the city of Austin?
In the city of Austin.
Okay. That probably would not include university students?
No, that does not include university students, which there's probably about another 3,500 to 4,000.
Right, right. Well, I think that it's a matter of general interest, the fact that the Jewish population has grown. There have been articles in the paper about the high-tech organizations, corporations that are moving people in. I remember one story about those who were coming from Florida.
IBM.
Right, and that there were a number of Orthodox Jews in that, and they hadn't found here the same kind of religious practice and life that they were accustomed to before, and starting something new in that regard.
Well, I think it was overstated by the newspapers. Frankly, the number of families have come have been less than 150. They didn't have the kind of characteristics that were portrayed in the newspaper articles, although the author of the articles did his best to be factual. most of those people have found homes, if you will, in the existing congregations in town. And the articles painted, the first set painted the Jewish community as far more primitive than we are. We have a thriving Jewish community here in Austin, and the people that have come, that have become involved, engaged themselves in the community, have so expressed themselves. And we've written about them in our own newspaper and elsewhere. And they've been surprised by the openness and friendliness of Texas. I mean, the biggest issue that IBM had, not just for the Jewish employees, but in general, we're getting people to move from Florida to the wilds of Texas,
Right.
and overcome that perception.
Right.
Once they have that opportunity to see Texas, and those who have settled here, I think their concerns have been considerably allayed.
I'd like to come back to the religious life of Jewish folks in town, because that's Austin Metropolitan Ministry includes some of the organizations, the congregations that you mentioned. But I would like to go back to what you were saying as far as the secular services. If you looked at it from the standpoint of, if there were no Jewish Federation in Austin, what you'd be missing is a variety of services that you named.
Right.
And of all of those services, what would be the one that is sort of the starting point and heart of the rest?
It's not an easy question. Let me approach your question from a tangent for a second.
Okay.
The way one identifies as being Jewish is more than through the religious dimension.
All right.
So there's a question of peoplehood, there's a question of ethnicity, there's a whole variety of dimensions to it which we may or may not want to explore. So there's a variety of needs that are non-religious that need to be met, such as, you're a young family, you have a child, you want them to go to a child care facility, and you want that to have a Jewish ambiance. You want it to be a place that celebrates Jewish holidays. You want it to be a place that has Jewish symbols. You may be uncomfortable with, which many Jews are, as I assume most non-Christians are, with the emphasis on Christmas and Christological sorts of things around December. So you want your child, and you want to exist in more of a Jewish ambiance, at least part of your life. And that's what our early childhood program provides. So if there wasn't a federation, then somebody would go about creating the federation to raise the dollars, to support those institutions, to coordinate those institutions, to do the planning that's necessary. And there's another dimension we're involved in that I didn't mention before, which is very important, which we call community relations, which is basically interpreting what and who Jews are to the rest of society.
I see.
We're a very small part, number-wise, and there are considerable misunderstandings and prejudices. And also as part of that effort is our general concern for tolerance in society in general, because societies that are not tolerant are certainly not tolerant to Jews,
Right.
and so forth.
Always the issue of anti-Semitism in any given society.
Without question.
Right.
Without question. Or I think in a place like Austin, I think it's probably more of a question of resistance or intolerance to people who are different or who are not the same.
Well, what you're describing in regard to the child care that's provided that has the reference to the holidays that are part of your Jewish tradition, I've heard the phrase cultural Jews, those who may not be involved in a synagogue or a temple, but for whom that identity is important.
Absolutely.
In terms of the culture.
Absolutely.
And there are other ways that expresses itself besides the program for children?
Absolutely. Take cultural Jews, there's cultural programs. There are people who identify obviously very strongly with the state of Israel. And one of the things we do is we do have programs about Israel and the Middle East, and we try to present what we understand to be the facts and what's going on in the Middle East. The Consul General of the State of Israel, who's housed in Houston for the Southwest, will be coming to Austin on February 24th for a community forum, to which the entire community is welcome, and explaining the State of Israel's positions vis-a-vis current developments in the Middle East. So there's a sort of a quasi-political connection. There's also just people want to just be together, to share. People with a common identity want to share that identity in social occasions. And then there's our newspaper, which is a forum for discussion of issues of concern to the Jewish community. And again, we can get into what those issues are if you'd like, but you know, it's just the need of a minority community to have a way to come together and share its sense of self.
Right. The fact that you mentioned the asking or encouraging the religious groups to come to the campus.
Right.
Have you found any resistance to that in terms of well, what's the rationale for necessarily being in one place?
Absolutely. I come from New York State, where there are far more Jews, and it's a far different society. Not necessarily better, but just different. And I think there has been some concern expressed about congregating in one area. But I think for the most part, the community is looking with great pride at the development of the campus. This community has not had that facility. We are one of only 2 Jewish communities in this country of the size of population we are that don't have a Jewish community center where there's physical education facilities, an auditorium, meeting space, an art gallery, kitchen, opportunity just to, for the whole community to come together. The other is Las Vegas, which is the fastest growing Jewish community in the United States.
Oh, really?
And we are the second fastest growing Jewish community in the United States.
You said that the average age was, you implied it was young.
The average age in Austin, according to the census, is 31 and a half years old. And the average age of the Jewish community, according to a study that was done back in 87 or 88, was 31 point something or other. So basically, the Jewish community, basically dovetails what the general population looks like. And you can see that anecdotally. I mean, it's a very young community.
This youth is implying that people maybe been to the university who are remaining, or people who are coming in with a new industry. And
I think it's the nature of high tech, which is obviously dominant in this area.
yeah.
It tends to attract younger people. The university, there are a lot of people who want to stay in Austin, obviously. I didn't really appreciate that much until I came to Austin to live. But it's obviously a very pleasant place to live, and a lot of people want to be here.
Well, I think that the fact that you've come from another place in the country, as you were implying, where there's a higher percentage of the Jewish population, will make for a little interesting dialogue after we take a break, because I'd like to get your impressions of what the capital city, Texas, is like from your standpoint.
My pleasure.
Okay, and we're glad for you folks to stay with us as we take a break now from Austin Faith Dialogue. Welcome back to Austin Faith Dialogue, where we're glad to have you with us on the Jewish Federation as our subject for the day. We're also, Barry Silverberg is the director of the Jewish Federation. We're delighted for your comments in the first half, but I want to come back to, right at the beginning, you said you had been here for about a year and a half.
Right.
Came from upper New York State.
Syracuse, New York.
Give us your view of Austin as just a recent arrival and in light of that previous experience.
And I'll be guaranteed safe passage out of here?
I think you can
okay.
have a safe passover.
Safe passage out of here. I think what most impresses me is the pride of place in Texas, of how proud people are of their state and of this community. You don't have that in New York State. And that's something which exists to a great deal in the Jewish community as well. And that's a very, very strong psychological motivating element to build a community. The Jewish community and the Jewish community in Austin is not as well developed in terms of its institutions as in larger cities, obviously. And what I came here to do was to help grow that community and to develop that infrastructure, which is what my profession is all about. I'm very impressed by the friendliness of the city and just the can-do attitude of Texas and or of Austin. I don't know the rest of Texas, but Austin.
Right.
Those and obviously the physical beauty and the environment and so forth are all very enticing. And I think that in terms of the Jewish community, we have an opportunity to grow a very special community, whereas across the rest of the United States and Canada, many of the Jewish population is located in large urban areas which are in decline economically. And clearly here we are in the Southwest and we're on the upsurge economically, at least for the present. And so there's lots of opportunities, and all those factors impress me. The Jewish community in Austin is not as overt in its presence as it is in the Northeast, clearly. And that's something that we're trying to address to involve the Jewish, or elements of the Jewish community more in some aspects of the civic life. In Syracuse, I was a founder and the president of the Interreligious Council.
Interreligious?
Interreligious Council,
Okay.
which was one of the first interreligious councils in the country, as a matter of fact. You know, I look forward to getting more involved with Austin Metropolitan Ministries over time. My time has been taken largely in organizational matters at the moment, but in another year or so, I hope to broaden, and I hope to see a lot more Jews involved in AMM and other organizations. I think there hasn't been as many as there ought to be.
Now, back in January, there was publicized Community Unity as connected to your federation. What was that about?
Community Unity is a program in which all the Jewish organizations in town, started 4 years ago, and we received national awards for this, come together to sponsor a weekend. It was, I think, 2 weekends ago. And what we usually do is bring in a speaker from out of town. The person will make a presentation at a Friday night or a Shabbat service, Sabbath service. We'll then have a group engage in Torah study. Torah study is the study of the first 5 books of the Bible. And to usually the person also is involved in teaching children. And this particular weekend, we brought somebody in who spent the weekend talking about the 10 Commandments and how they relate to current life, honoring one's parents and so forth. And it was a fascinating weekend. And there must have been, I would say, thousands of people who, in one way or another, were engaged in the program.
I see.
So it's a coming together.
So it's a coming together within the Jewish community to affirm this, what you have in common and what...
A sense about Jewishness, to reinforce it. It's a family experience. My own 2 children loved what they did. You know, arts and crafts. You know, there's a practice in Jewish life to hang what's called a mezuzah on one's door, which has a prayer from Deuteronomy. The children made their own little mezuzahs, so that hands-on experience helps reinforce their identity. And they did a variety of other arts and crafts projects. So it was just fun, socialization.
Okay. Well, I have worked in the Northeast and in the Chicago area before coming here, and everywhere I've gone, I've noticed there's been a Jewish community center or some center for people to come together for social purposes as well as cultural. And so I think that you certainly are on a growing edge here. I mean, this federation has been in Austin for a while, though.
Since the 30s.
Since the 30s?
Yes. In one way or another since the 30s.
So, but it's
been small.
Hasn't really grown too much.
The Jewish population, as early as 1991 or 92, was only 4,000 souls.
Oh, I see.
So now we're talking 7 to 10 in a matter of 5 years.
Doubling within the decade.
And it's continued to grow. You know, so you know we're talking about exponential growth in terms of the size of the Jewish community. at a much higher percentage than probably the growth of the city itself. So, as a result of that, we now have, or are beginning to have, the critical mass needed for a variety of Jewish institutions, which the community couldn't sustain before.
Okay, sure.
You can't sustain a Jewish community center with 4,000 folks, which includes children and older people, etc. As we get larger and larger, there's a need for, and we have the financial base, the volunteer base, etc., to support, a much more vibrant Jewish community.
Okay, and then when you were saying that you have such a large number of Jewish students at the university,
At the university, right?
that's one thing about Austin that's unique.
That's for sure.
And tell us a little bit about the ministry with the Jewish students there.
Well, the Hillel Foundation is run by Rabbi Kerry Baker. That's an agency which we help fund. The money we raise helps support it, as does money raised throughout the state and other communities by Jewish federations. And they have a variety of programs on the religious side in terms of providing services in the 3 or 4 main strands of Judaism: Reform, Conservative, Orthodox, and Reconstructionist. They have social activities, dances, and so forth, and cultural programming, educational programming. Co-sponsor, this year is the 100th anniversary of the founding of modern Zionism, and there's a series of lectures going on which Hillel and ourselves are co-sponsoring, the Federation are co-sponsoring. So there's a whole variety of activities which are intended to be welcoming and engaging of Jewish students. And the ministry up there is particularly important because we know that in terms of Jewish identity, that students come from rather insulated homes more often, come to university, are open to a variety of ideas, and are probably at that point most vulnerable to going ways, different ways than remaining Jews. And so what Kerry does there, what Rabbi Baker does there, is critically important and something of critical importance and interest to us, and we support it as much as we can.
Right. Well, that's the thing that I think Austin, of course, for so many years has had the university just kind of at the center of things in so many ways, and that in relationship to the Jewish students who are there, you've got a special ministry that you wouldn't
Without
have
question.
if you were living in some other place.
Well, in Syracuse we had a large university, little basketball team that you may have heard of. but we had a large Jewish population there as well.
One other thing about the community center, the name of Michael Dell has been frequently associated with that. Tell us the role that he plays in.
Well, the Dell family, Michael and Susan, purchased the 40 acres and donated the 22 acres to the Jewish Federation. And it's called the Dell Jewish Community Campus. Philip and Sylvia Spurtis, who are from Chicago originally, have donated the funds towards the naming of the center itself, so it's the Spurtis Jewish Community Center. And others have given dollars to help, to give the dollars that are needed to build the facility. We're still involved in that fundraising, and we're still involved in the effort to build the rest of the facility.
You got a target date for when it's going to be done?
We hope to open in September of 1998 for the Jewish high holidays at that point, which happens to dovetail the beginning of the academic year, and for our early childhood program and our center and so forth. That's what we're hoping for at this point.
And what do you anticipate as far as, once this is up and running, the interaction with the larger community? I mean, obviously this is a place for consolidation of identity.
Absolutely.
And for the Jewish population. But what about the outreach and other people coming in and enjoying some of that same kind of...
That's a critically important part of what we're all about. I don't mean to leave the impression that we're parochial in everything we're doing, okay? We expect that probably about 30% of the Jewish Community Center membership will be not Jewish.
Is that right?
Probably. And we expect that, we not only expect, but we'll be marketing and positioning the campus to be a place for people to use in the neighborhood and elsewhere. There is no site like that in that immediate area. We've been approached by a number of sports leagues and by the high school, by the junior high, the middle school, I guess they call it here, and so forth, to use the facility, which isn't built yet.
But they put in their bid already, huh?
Absolutely. It's critically important that we're part of the rest of society. One of the mottos we use, or slogans we use, is building a thriving Jewish community in a greater Austin. I think they're very much entwined. It's in our interests and everybody's interest to make this a strong community, both spiritually as well as economically and otherwise, as we possibly can. And we expect that our presence in the Northwest Hills, in terms of the site, is going to be a significant addition.
Now, your headquarters will be located there when it's
Absolutely.
done. Right
Absolutely.
now, where are you located?
They're on Jollyville Road I guess it's still North Austin, Northwest Austin.
And I don't think we have your number to put on the screen, but just tell us if people want to call you. What?
It's 331-1144.
Okay.
And for those members of your audience who may be Jewish, who haven't connected with the Jewish community, on March 4th, we're holding what we call Shalom Austin, Welcome to Austin outreach program at,
Oh, really?
at the Renaissance Austin in the Arboretum. And I welcome them to call me to get information about it. And one of the things we do is provide a welcoming outreach to folks who are Jewish, who are moving to Austin, looking to connect to the Jewish community and to reestablish their homes here in Austin.
I see. So that if people are new to the area and they want to sort of get a handle on relationships and so
Call
on.
us.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Do some networking there.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And have some fun even.
Yeah.
So,
Before the show started, I was commenting to you that this is going to air on the 23rd of
Right.
February, which is the day before George Washington's actual birthday.
right.
Not on President's Day, but when he was actually born. And you were telling me about in the colonies,
Right.
early republic, what happened on that day. Could you
Well,
share that with us?
there's an impression, which is very true, that Jews often feel deeply about things and are awfully sometimes very argumentative amongst themselves as well as with others. What happened was there were 5 congregations in the colonies at that time, and while all the spiritual communities sent greetings to the new president, the Jewish community waited a year because they were arguing and hassling over what the verbiage was going to be, and then ended up sending 3 separate messages. So, but we've come a long way since then, and
That's why I have Community Unity Day.
that's absolutely, absolutely. You have to remind yourself every opportunity you can get, and that's what the campus will be. The campus is going to be a very big coming together of the Jewish community, and be a very visible place for the entire Austin community.
Well, I think that's one thing that we can look forward to already, is that there will be a place in which there's a welcome to
Absolutely.
all of the folks in town, and I think that as we come up this 1997 upon your celebration of Passover, and we can look forward to that at this point, and hope that you will find that your welcome here yourself continues to unfold.
So far, it's been pretty good.
Yeah, and for Austin Metropolitan Ministries, I welcome you, Barry,
Well, thank you.
and welcome you folks again to join us again next week on our next edition of Austin Faith Dialogue. I'm Rich Thompson, and peace be with you, and good day.